Okay, we'll bring this meeting to order. This will be the April 4th Board of Adjustment meeting. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Clay Thomas,
Here.
Christina Hill,
Here.
Lee Lawrence,
Here.
Brad Stanley, and Kim Toulouse. They're absent. Okay. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. If we'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Large, Mr. Large, the ethics law announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the board today, you have received a gift or a loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provide a representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at that time the matter is being considered, and you must furthermore abstain from the deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Board members are also reminded that under the Board of Adjustment rules, if you've had contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the board today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd, the appeal procedure, please.
All right, most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is signed by the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Thank you. Next is general public comment. Any person is invited to speak on any item on or off the agenda during this period. Action may not be taken on any matter raised during this public comment period until the matter is specifically listed on the agenda as an action item. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone wishing to speak at this time?
We have no public comment.
Thank you. Item 6, possible action to approve the agenda. Before we actually ask for a motion, I believe there is one case, agenda item 8D. It's WVIO BUI 17-0106, in which there is a wish for a continuance. Mr. Lloyd, can you brief us on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yeah, we received a request from the appellant, Mr. George Pizarro, to continue this item to the May agenda meeting. We had staff from the county had originally represented that the item would tentatively or likely be scheduled in May. Based on that information, it was his assumption that he should be here in May, and he had other plans for today. So with that, it's up to the board whether or not they choose to grant that continuance.
Thank you. As Mr. Lloyd and I had a discussion, this case is going on 16 months. It does need to have a conclusion, but given the set of circumstances that you presented to us, I don't have a problem with go ahead and postponing this one until a later date. But with that, I'll ask any discussion amongst board members. I will take I would imagine we need to make a motion on this. Mr. Large?
You would need to move to approve the agenda with excluding item D.
Thank you very much. I will accept the motion.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is possible action to approve the March 7th, 2019 draft minutes. I only noticed one item that I already spoke to the Madam Secretary about. It's on page 6 of 7. Basically about halfway down, it just says member, and then there's no name, seconded the motion, which carried unanimously. If we can go ahead and do the research and plug that information in, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. With that, I'll accept the motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Moving on to the public hearing. Board of Adjustment may take action to approve with or without conditions, modify and approve with or without conditions, or deny a request. The Board of Adjustment may also take action to continue an item to a future agenda. Up first on the agenda is item 1, administrative case number WADMIN 19-0003, Desert Skies Middle School sign. Go ahead and come up to the podium, and prior to that, are there any disclosures from board members?
No.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parker, I believe?
Yes. Jacob Parker, Washoe County Planning. I'm here to present WADMIN 19-0003. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. We're here to talk about Desert Skies Middle School sign, their application. This first slide shows the front elevation of the building where the proposed sign will go. On the far right is the actual frontage they're looking at. This is Desert Skies Middle School. It's being built at 7550 Donatello Drive. This is for Washoe County School District. The proposal is for a building-mounted sign and in keeping with Washoe County's school district signage theme. This is the parcel. It's a 40-acre parcel just north of Sun Valley and west of Spanish Springs. If you look to the right, you can see that purple line is Sun Valley Boulevard tracing its way up to the yellow box, which is the parcel in question. This is a zoomed-in look on the vicinity map on the left. You can see just below the blue box where the parcel in question, the X where Donatello Drive and Sun Valley Boulevard intersect. This shows the zoning on the right. It's a piece of the full parcel. The rest of the parcel is open space. Again, I said it's a 40-acre parcel. It's federal land. It is general rural, and it's in the Spanish Springs area plan. It falls under the Sun Valley Citizen Advisory Board. This is the split between the two area plans, as right there on the line. The yellow box signifies where the building is being built. Per Washoe County Development Code, it allows up to 120 square feet of signage for civic uses in the general rural zone. If you want to exceed the 120 square feet, that's what the administrative permit comes in. And for your review, that's what this application is. The proposed sign is about 224 square feet. The frontage of the building itself is 750 square feet, or about. This is the proposal. You can see some of the dimensions. The total sign length is about 82 feet. The height at its largest is about 3.5 feet. This is a view from the nearest property, or just in front of the nearest property on Donatello Drive. It's about 510 feet. I've pointed out where the proposed sign will go with the yellow pointer. This is from the west. It's the last clear view from the west. It's about 1,000 feet, excuse me. And from the east, about 1,600 feet. You can barely make out the building between the light pole and where the circle goes around at the yellow circle. This is Kendall DePauli Middle School. This is in Reno, but it gets you a feel for what the sign would look like on the front of the building. Notice was sent to 178 property owners within 500 feet. Notice was also sent to the Sun Valley Citizen Advisory Board. They weren't meeting during the review period. However, we sent them a worksheet. In both cases, no comments were returned. This is a list of the reviewing agencies. With the exception of engineering, no comments were returned. In engineering's case, those were conditions of approval. After review, this can be approved with conditions. Your conditions of approval are in Exhibit A of your packet. I have a possible motion, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No. Ms. Hill?
It's my understanding that it's gonna be like a cement background. It's not gonna be, you had it yellow highlighted just for the purposes of those slides. It's not gonna be a colored sign.
No, it is going to be in keeping with that theme there.
Yeah, just plain background.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's my only question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Okay.
Is the applicant present, and if so, do they wish to speak?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Brad Van Wert from the architectural firm of Van Wert Bogoti Architects. We're the designers of the building. And I have a quick slide show that would probably define a little bit more what your question was, Ms. Hill. It's coming. Just by way of history, the Desert Skies Middle School has a sister school. They're being built simultaneously, and they are based on a prototype, which is Kendall DePoli, which you're looking at here. It was done 10 years ago. And we have a fourth one that just broke ground up in Arrow Creek. So we may be back again. We'll show you a little bit of that in a second. Not too sure how to advance this.
I think I'll have to do it from over here.
You do it? Okay. Yeah, you can spin through these. Just, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, as Jacob has shown, here's a more detailed site plan of the school. And it sits at the very, very north end of Sun Valley off Donatello Drive. You can see the sign layout above. Actually, they're individual letters. There's no placard or anything, and the individual letters are attached directly to the building. The building is, the background that it's going to go on are metal panels. It's basically the front wall of the gymnasium. We can go to the next slide. And you saw this slide before. Basically, it's a non-illuminated sign, and it's just letters, as I said before. We can go to the next slide. This gives you a little bit idea. This is a rendering of the school with its entire length. The building's over 450 feet long. So the design of the sign, which you can see on the left side, and that yellow block are metal panels that cover the gym wall. And it was basically a proportional response to the length of the building, the size of the building, and for us, it was basically just informational graphics to try to progressively disclose. You see the building first and then the sign itself. So actually, proportionately, the sign is actually quite small. You can go to the next slide. You can see a little bit more detail of that. There's some windows on the left. There's an entrance to the lower left of that main block, and then you see the sign of the building, Desert Skies Middle School. To the right of that, you can see there's a kind of a V-shaped roof, and that'll be the entrance to the school. Next slide. Again, you saw Kendall DePoli. If you go to the next slide again very quickly, you can see the whole context that we're talking about. So when you put the sign in the length, in proportion to the length of the building, we think it's an appropriate response. Next. Next. And as we said before, there's a sister school called Sky Ranch. It's not more than 4 or 5 miles in Spanish Springs, and it has the same motif, and it's in the city of Sparks, and they've already approved this sign. So we're trying to continue that theme from Kendall to Poley to Sky Ranch to Desert Skies. And I think if you go to the last slide, we'll be coming in again with the Arrow Creek Middle School, and it will be based on the same theme. The school does not have a name yet, but we're hoping to use the same proportion, same type, style, and font as the three that have preceded it. Great job, kudos for the staff report, Jacob. We concur with the report, and we agree with all the conditions that are put forth in the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one second. Any questions?
No?
Mr. Lawrence?
Just one question. Is there a yellow field behind the letters? I don't know if.
Yes.
Yes, there is.
It's about as yellow as you can get.
Okay.
The metal panels are actually painted a canary yellow color.
Okay, that's not necessarily a concern. I just wanted to make sure we understood what that was. Thank you.
Yeah, we love it.
I have one quick question. Lighting, will the name actually be lit up, or will there be any lighting on the name?
No, the sign is non-illuminated and there are no spotlights showing it, but the parking lot lighting will illuminate it in the general field of illumination for the school.
Excellent. Thank you. Madam Secretary, anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? Thank you. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Discussion?
Not really. It just seems like, this is the way the schools are going. It looks nice. And I realize they have to come here and ask for permission for signage that large, but looks fine.
Yeah, I concur with that statement.
I agree.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
I'll give a motion.
Ms. Hill?
I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and the information received during the public hearing, the Board of Adjustment approve administrative permit case number WADMIN 19-0003 for Desert Skies Middle School sign, having made all four findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code, Section 110.808.25, including consistency, improvement, site suitability, and issuance not detrimental.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Ms. Lawrence, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is WSUP 18-0020, Club at Arrow Creek, Convention and Meeting Facility and Grading. I believe it's Ms. Olander. Before we get started, are there any disclosures?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, excellent. Ms. Olander.
Good afternoon. Julie Olander with Planning and Building. So the item you have before you right now is a special use permit and an administrative permit for the club at Arrow Creek. The special use permit is to expand the uses to convention and meeting facilities and also for grading. And the administrative permit is for adding the use of indoor sports and recreation. This is where it's located, as many of you know. This is Club at Arrow Creek is a member-only facility with a 18-hole golf course, two 18-hole golf courses, and various facilities. You also approved a special use permit in September 6th of 2008 to allow them to have outdoor sports and recreation uses, which was the pool and the pool house and some other items around that, and then also the grading. In March on March 12th, the county commissioners approved a zone change from high-density rural and low-density suburban to Parks and Rec. And that change now allows them to come before you for the uses that they're requesting. They are now zoned PR, Parks and Rec. Under the use table, you'll see that conventions and meeting facilities allowed with a special use permit in Parks and Rec, and indoor sports and recreation is allowed with an administrative permit in Parks and Recreation. The other item that they're asking for is for grading, and that's for grading of over 1,000 cubic yards, and for a driveway that traverses a slope that's 30% or greater. The application is proposing to expand the existing facility by 19,000 square feet. They're adding a new kitchen and dining area to accommodate weddings and special events. And then they're also adding 7,000 square foot pickleball court. And that's going to be down in the existing southeast portion of the parking lot. Here's where that parking lot is, or they're proposing to put the pickleball court, and this is for the administrative permit, that's that indoor sports and recreation. And then this is the driveway that's going to be, has a slope of more than 30%. They're using that right now as an access to where the special use permit that you permitted late last fall. So that's what that equipment there is for. But they want to make that into a permanent driveway. Here is a layout of the club, and I've highlighted the areas that are going to be changed in yellow. The lower right has the pickleball court, and again, that's for the administrative permit. And then the yellow stars are where there's new buildings, and there's going to be proposed grading in those areas, and then also the expansion of the clubhouse itself up in the upper left. And here's another view of that, showing the driveway area and the slopes that are involved and where the facilities are going. The applicant has indicated that there are no improvements needed to the roadways or parking area. Just reminding you, this area was originally set up to have a lot more parking, so there's quite a bit of parking at the site. They are looking at adding more parking for golf carts, though. And they are not looking at adding any more they meet the landscaping requirements currently, but they will be probably re-landscaping the area to accommodate for the new facilities. The applicant has also worked with the neighbors to make sure that they are not losing their views, or there's not going to be an issue with noise or lighting. Notices were sent out to 294 parcels. This did go before the South Truckee Meadows Washoe Valley CAB on January 3rd, and it was recommended for approval. Here is again a view of what the parcels that were noticed. Staff received no issues, and there are conditions included in your staff report. Staff was able to make the findings that they're listed in your staff report on page 13 and 14. And I provide a motion, and I'm available for question, and the applicant's representative is also available for questions.
Any questions?
I don't know.
No.
No. Thank you very much. Is the applicant present, and they wish to speak on this matter?
For the record, Dave Snellgrove, I'm the Planning and Right-of-Way Manager for CFA. It's good to be back before you. As Julie mentioned, we were here in September of last year with the backyard grounds. Now we're working on the front yard portion, which with the building architecture and everything just wasn't ready at the time that we came in with the backyard grounds. It would have been easier to go through one special use permit rather than two, but we are here with the second one. And I do have a PowerPoint presentation that'll be coming up. Or a PDF. I might have to, am I going to have you advance it, or can I advance it with the clicker? Okay. Julie did a great job in going over some of the history of where we've been, the location of the site, so I won't go back over any of that. Working on this project with us have been Greek Pickett Landscape Architectures and also PHX, which are both out of Arizona. They've done a wonderful job on the project, and we've had a great local team, members and people who are very active within the club and within the community of Arrow Creek have participated in this. One thing that Julie mentioned was that we went to the CAB, and we also did do some outreach to the neighbors. With this specific project, we, in the front yard area, had an open house meeting just for the nearest affected cul-de-sacs to the north and the south of the project site, and then also did an overall community open house. And I want to say there were over 200 people that attended the community open house event. I was not able to attend the smaller event. If you could advance the slide, please. A little bit of the overall history. I covered this in September, so I won't take much time on it, but it fell into bankruptcy. A group called the Friends of Arrow Creek purchased it out of bankruptcy within the year it fell in. The current plan that we have is to expand the offerings that the club has. The club had really been focused primarily on golf. Having 36 holes is a lot of golf members. In an area that wasn't attracting as many golf members, one, and two, golf has had its challenges and struggles, and I'll go through that in a little greater detail on another slide. Lucky Star Golf purchased this out of bankruptcy, actually took it from the Friends of Arrow Creek, and has been moving forward proactively in trying to create some different offerings for members. We've got the pool in the backyard area that was previously approved. They're going to have a health and fitness center, which will have spin classes, yoga classes, things such as that, and also the pickleball court, which if you haven't played pickleball, you'll probably soon hear about pickleball. It's really, really fun. My mom got me involved in it. It's one of the fastest growing sports which Mr. Pastillo can fill you in on if you want him to bend your ear on it. So trying to recreate the business model with this and the offerings to attract a greater number and a more diverse selection of members. The proof has been in the pudding with it. In talking to Mr. Pastillo the other night, and I was corrected that they hadn't yet turned a profit. They actually have started turning a profit here fairly recently. When they purchased this out of bankruptcy, there were about 160 or so members. They're up over 800 members now. A lot of those new memberships have come on with the energy that's being created by these improvements that are currently under construction in the backyard, and we certainly hope to get the improvements going in the front yard area. If you could advance the slide, please. I think it froze. Oop. So some of the golf horror stories that we've had around the region: in 2009, Northgate closed. In 2011, the Andrea closed, and those have kind of sat idle. There's different ideas of what to do with the land. More recently, and this was around the end of the year, I saw a story in the Nevada Business View, Northern Nevada Business View, that identified that Old Greenwood was having problems. I understand that Old Greenwood has been purchased by a group probably not dissimilar from the Friends of Arrow Creek or Lucky Star Golf, and hopefully they will be able to get a model working that can keep that course open. It's quite a wonderful course to play. So we don't want to see the same type of thing happen with either a portion or all of Arrow Creek, and that was one of the drivers behind what is proposed with this project. Could you advance the slide, please? Julie covered this pretty well, so it just goes over what the special use permit and administrative permit covers, so I'll jump past that. Next slide, please. I don't really need that either. So the overall site is 149 acres. Where we're working is really off to the eastern side of it. We did rezone the whole property for Parks and Recreation, so that includes, I believe there's 8 golf holes at the clubhouse, the parking lot area. Those are what got rezoned to Parks and Rec. What we're working with is approximately 7.8 acres of that 149 acres. If you could advance the slide, please. So this is up showing the clubhouse area, a little bit of the backyard grounds off to the left-hand side there. You have the clubhouse, which is shown in white, and then the existing parking area. The pickleball building is pointed out. That'll actually take out some of our parking that we have, so we are modifying some of the parking. You can see over on the right-hand side of the screen, closer to Arrow Creek Parkway, there's some herringbone parking that'll be a one-way drive out. That right now is just a single perpendicular parking area, perpendicular parking space area. That'll get modified. It picks us up some of those parking spaces that we're losing. And we do have some other minor additions of parking spaces. I'll go through parking a little bit more on a later slide. Next slide, please. So the areas of the clubhouse, the existing clubhouse is shown in the white outline. And then you can see pretty much on all four corners of the building, we've got something new being added. Up in the purple area off to the upper left-hand side is the fitness area. That's where the yoga, the spin room, the cardio and weight area will be. There will be expansion to the golf shop down the bottom left-hand side of this image. There's going to be a kids area. They had a kids area where people could be watched. It'll be a little more formalized, but it will not be a daycare center. It'll be for people who are coming up there. If they're going to golf, go work out, they're in a social club, a place where they can have their kids while they go do their social event, and they can come right back to them. But it is not a drop-off daycare center. There's an expansion of the kitchen, and also some of the areas within the existing building will be remodified. The kitchen area is going to be quite large and probably an amazing kitchen to cook out of. The green area off to the upper right-hand side, that's where there'll be some additional dining and where the events area will be that'll accommodate for conventions and weddings and such. Next slide, please. This one's really hard to read, but it shows the general floor plan. You can see the table alignments. It is color-coded, so you can kind of see up in the same upper left-hand corner. That's where the workout rooms and spin classes and things like that will be. On to the next slide, please. So I wanted to cover the parking. You know, we're enlarging the building by just about doubling the size of the building. We're adding 25 total parking spaces to it. As Ms. Olander mentioned, that we've got a lot of parking on the site. In the application, I think I had 13 different aerial slides that showed some of the parking levels. Over time, talking to the general management at the club, there was really only one time where they came close to filling that parking area up, and that was when they had a JDRF golf tournament, and you had news crews there, you had parents of children with juvenile diabetes. It was a big event. I've been up there for many golf tournaments, and they don't come close to filling it up. It gets fuller than it normally is, but they're excessively parked as it is right now. Another factor that the Arrow Creek being a private gated community offers is for its members to be able to drive their golf carts down to the club, whether it's to go golfing, whether it's to do a social event, whether it's to dine, and they don't have to use the area streets, one, and also they don't take up parking spaces in the front. Depending upon the day and talking to the general manager for the club, they may see upwards of 80 to 100 carts throughout the day that do come down there. It's 80 to 100 less parking spaces that you need depending upon the time of day, overall. So we have 294 parking spaces currently. We're proposing 319. We calculated out 314. We did that very conservatively. If you have any questions regarding it, I have my table up of my table in here as a slide in the back that I can go to and run through it with you. But we do feel that they have ample parking to accommodate for the uses that they have. You can go to the next slide. These next two slides, and I'll go through them quickly, these were in the application. These are 8 of the 13 slides I put in the application that show different times. These go all the way back to, I think, 2011 in the 8 slides that I have. Sometimes a little fuller, but I'd say it's no more than 50 to 55% full in any of these images. These were just pulled off of Google Earth. You can go to the next slide, please. These go a little farther back. Our oldest one is in the bottom right-hand corner from June 14th of 2011. We were able to tell the time of day generally by the shadowing of the building, just saying whether they were midday, AM, or PM. I think this shows a picture, and having been up there as many times as I have most recently, you don't see the heavy use in the parking. So we feel that our parking information, parking calculations are appropriate. If you can go to the next slide, please. The existing club architecture will be emulated. There will be a change to some of the rocks that they have at the corners and some of the treatments and also some of the roof treatments, but the general styling will remain very similar. If you can go to the next slide. This is the elevations of the building, and really it takes on the same general character as the existing building. It just gets a little bit longer on all sides. Next slide. The perspective view of the architecture, which currently you have a porte-cochere coming up in that turning circle. That'll just be enhanced with the new roofing and the new rock treatment. Next slide, please. Here's the rear of the building. It already takes on that appearance with the hexagonal rooms. They'll just be enhanced, and the building overall will be a little bit bigger. And some of the outdoor seating areas will get shifted around a little bit and more formalized. Next slide, please. This is the elevations of the pickleball building. And I'll go into a few perspectives that we have on it. You can see the top elevation is the only one. There's some roll-up or slide out doors that they will have, and then that's where the main entry will be. Around the other three sides, there are windows. They're fairly slender, but there aren't any openings. And one of the things that we're trying to accomplish there is because the location of the pickleball building is closer to the cul-de-sac that is at the south of the site, having the openings just away from from those houses will help to muffle or isolate any of those plangent sounds that could be coming from the pickleball. We don't anticipate this to be a late night type use, that this would be more morning and midday and into the early evening, but we don't see this going later into the night. So we feel that the sounds will be muffled and appropriate based on the architectural design, the opening placement, and also hours that our operators will be adhering to. Next slide. That is a vision. There should actually be a parking lot in front of it. It's grass. So the architects took a little liberty there, but you can see the openings on a nice day like we have today. You could open the doors and be very pleasant in there. If it's a little more inclement, those two doors on the side would most likely be closed. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the indoor. This is a 7,000 square foot building. It'll accommodate for 4 pickleball courts within the building. So that would be looking out to the north, as you can see the 3 opening doors on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So we believe that this is a great project. We've had a lot of good positive support and a lot of good energy coming out in the community about this, as evidenced by the fact that they've been gaining more and more members in anticipation of what the club will be able to bring and offer. We're in agreement with the staff that all the necessary findings can be made, and we're also accepting of the conditions as presented. With that, I will close my comments, and if Mr. Postello would like to come up and say anything, I will invite him.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gary Postello, Lucky Star Golf and the Club at Arrow Creek. Mr. Chairman, board members, what we have done here and all of the permits that we've applied for and the zoning changes is really to bring us into code with the county, to bring us legally into code going forward. The 3 previous boards and commissions have voted unanimously to move this project forward. We hope that you will do the same as you did in our previous special use permit. It certainly enhances the community, enhances all of northern Nevada, as it'll be the finest club there is, and we're really excited to move forward with it. I hope you are too. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for either gentleman?
I just have one quick one.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Snellinggrove, I just wanted to ask you, this is a 149-acre parcel, I understand that. My throat's really going bad here today, folks, so just bear with me. Has there been any drainage issues in the past 3 winters, including the one we're having now, as far as off-site drainage?
I'm looking back at the general manager and one of the contractors, and they're shaking their head.
Excellent.
The golf course was set up. It has a series of ponds and accommodates for those. Working on the backyard area is where we've actually had to deal with a lot of the different piping and changing the location of some of the piping. That is being worked on in association with where we're putting the pool building and having to modify a few of the drainage structures and making sure that they still accommodate for what's necessary coming off of the hillsides. In the front yard area, by and large, the parking area is going to remain largely as it was created back in the late 90s. There is a drainage channel that runs to the south of the property. Actually, if you go back a couple slides, I can kind of point it out. Keep going. There's a site plan that I want to go to. Back. Yeah, let's go there. That one's good. Just to the bottom end of where the pickleball building is, before you get to the houses, there's a drainage channel there. We had to remain very cognizant of staying out of that drainage area because that has to have a carrying capacity. So rather than grading down into it with the pickleball building, they're actually going to have an extended footing that goes down so we don't have to impact any of that carrying capacity. So in respect to your question, that's probably the biggest area that we've had to deal with drainage. Most of what we've had to do has been in the backyard grounds area, which was part of the approval in September of last year.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have Gary Costello, but I think he's already spoke.
I think he has. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and close the open comment and bring it back to the board for discussion.
I really don't have a lot. Looks like a great project.
Yeah, I don't have any opposition.
No, I agree. I think it's just a dovetail from the September 18th, and now you're just expanding on that and improving the area and improving the whole community up there. So thank you very much for that. With that, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that after giving reasoned consideration of the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve with the conditions included as Exhibit A in this matter, special use permit case number WSUP 18-0020 for Lucky Star Golf LLC, having made all findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.810.30, those being for consistency, improvement, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and no effect on a military installation.
Okay, I believe there's additional information
Oh,
too. One
Okay, there is, of course. I move that after giving reasoned consideration, the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Board of Adjustment approve with the conditions included as Exhibit A to this matter, administrative permit case number WAMIN 18-0015 for Lucky Star Golf LLC, having made all the four findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110.808.25, those being for consistency, improvement, site suitability, and issuance not detrimental. And that's it.
And just for my clarification, would you just read the admin permit case number one more time?
Okay, administrative permit case number WADMIN 18-0015.
Thank you very much. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And passes unanimously. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, item C, is special use permit case number WSUP 190001, Incline Village Monopole. Go ahead and, Ms. Olander, I think you're up for that, but prior to that, are there any disclosures?
No.
Yes, I have a disclosure.
Okay.
You know, as part of the disclosure process, if you've had any contact with the people that are representing this project, and I just have to disclose the fact that I've been to community meetings where this has been discussed. I've heard the applicant and I've heard the community members. I haven't received any money, nobody in my family. I don't think it has changed my mind in any way, one way or the other. So I just want to disclose that I'm part of that community, and it's a big deal in England. So I have had contact with the applicant and the other people in the community.
Mr. Large?
Mr. Chairman, if it is, from Ms. Hill's representation, if it doesn't, her deliberation or voting on the matter is not going to be affected by any of this, then I don't see any reason for possible recusal.
Thank you. Ms. Olander?
Good afternoon, Julie Olander with Planning and Building. So this is a special use permit for a monopole in Incline Village. The monopole is proposed to be 117 feet high. It's a stealth monopine structure. It's proposed to be located on a parcel that's 8,078 square feet, and it's between, it's 100 feet south of the intersection of Incline Way and Village Boulevard. It's on the west side of Village Boulevard. It is also, so Washoe County Code requires a special use permit for this type of structure, and also the Incline Village Community Plan does too, which it's located within. The allowed height at this location, because the property is zoned general commercial, is 80 feet. However, the applicant has indicated a significant gap, coverage gap in that location, so they are allowed to have 10 more feet. And then because the tower is going to be stealth, it's going to be a monopine. That allows another 25% increase, so we're at 112 feet and 5 inches. They have asked for a minor deviation to increase the height another 10% to the 17 feet. TRPA asked that they would add onto the 112 feet to make the top of the tree more tree-like looking. Here is a location of where it's located in Incline. The parcel is zoned commercial, and the surrounding properties are zoned commercial. It's adjacent to a dental office to the south, and to the north and the west, there are vacant parcels, and then across the street on Village Boulevard, there's commercial offices. There are no structures on the parcel, however, the northern portion of the parcel is vacant. However, the southern portion is a paved parking lot that's used by the dental office to the south. The dental, the parcels where the dental office is located and this parcel are owned by the same owner. Here's a little closer in view. You can see the dental office to the south, and then this location, you can see the parking lot, and then where there's trees located, that's where they're proposing to put the wireless facility. Here's another picture. You can see the highlighted yellow where the monopine's going to be located, and then that enclosure would have the different wireless cabinets and so forth, equipment that they need to have. Here's a view just currently, so you can see it's quite snowy up there. And this is looking from Village Boulevard. This is looking from Incline Way, which is on the back side of the property. And then I got on Google Earth, because it's so hard to see, and got a view of it when there's no snow on the property. This is the landscape plan. They are proposing to add some trees. Initially, TRPA didn't want anything changed on the property. However, the applicant had a further conversation with them, and they are acceptable to add trees and native landscaping. This is the monopine structure, how it will look. So it does have a top, and that's what TRPA wanted also. This is the wireless coverage. On the left, you have the existing, and you can see, it's hard to sort of see where the proposed is on that one, but you can see the proposed site on the one on the right. That will be the coverage if this tower was to be approved. So there's quite an increase of coverage. The applicant provided 4 locations to look at the pine, what the monopine would look at, and these are where the locations are located. This is the one from Village Boulevard, and you can see the upper picture is without the monopine, and then the lower one is with the monopine. And here's another view from the southeast area, and again, you can see what the monopine would look like if it would be placed there. And again, from Incline Way, And then this is up on, from Tahoe, Highway 28 at Tahoe Boulevard. Sort of hard to see in that one. The applicant has stated that this tower is needed for coverage, to enhance service up there during special events, during the summertime. There's a real challenge with having wireless coverage. There are 3 towers existing in the area. One's at Diamond Peak Ski Area, one's at the Executive Golf Course, and then also at the Hyatt. The applicant did look at 13 other locations that information is provided in your staff report. However, this was the one location that met the best criteria concerning space, avoidance of scenic corridors, setbacks, availability, meeting TRPA requirements. The applicant has also required all the necessary documents from the FCC, which regulates the wireless tower and where wireless towers can be located. They have, that's included also in your staff report in the application itself, the reports from Hammett and Edison Incorporated Consulting and Engineers. So that covers any kind of conversation we would have about health issues and so forth. That's covered by FCC. We have the county has no jurisdiction in choosing where, if a tower is appropriate to be located or not. That is regulated by the FCC. And if it meets their criteria, as this report shows, I have no way to comment on that. These are the other locations that the applicant looked at throughout the area. Just looking at the site itself, they're proposing to have an enclosure that's approximately 35 by 46 feet. It will be, there will be a fencing around it, which will have wood-colored synthetic slats, so you won't be able to really see through the enclosure. They are proposing to add the 20% of landscaping. As I said earlier, TRP first said that they didn't want the site anything added, but after conversations, they're approving that possibility, allowing us to have the 20%. The applicant is proposing to add native landscaping and then 3 additional trees. The tower is not visible from Lake Tahoe or any identified scenic corridors except Highway 28, and then it's minimally visible because of the tree canopy. The monopole will hold up to 4 antennas that will be located at various heights between 65 and 112 feet, and the antennas will be leased to various carriers. The parcel, the application was noticed to 75 parcels within 500 feet of the site. It was presented to the incline CAB on the March 4th. There were numerous concerns about that there was a need for more towers in the area, the location, the height, and health issues. The CAB made no recommendations except to forward the minutes. I have received phone calls and numerous letters and emails as I have forwarded them all on to you. I believe you got another packet this afternoon. The reviewing agencies on this included planning and engineering and the GID. Those comments are included in your staff report under conditions of approval. I did want to make note of a typo on the conditions of approval. It says that the engineering and capital projects conditions, it says it's Washoe Building. I apologize for that error. It does have all the conditions listed and the contact person in engineering. There are 5 findings in the special use, and then there are an additional 3 findings for telecommunication facilities. Staff was able to make those findings, and that's listed in your staff report. And I have a possible motion available. The applicant is available for questions, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Julie. You know, I'm kind of confused about the TRPA requested additional height for the tree to add more branches so that it would fit in better or something. Will it still have that cap on the top of it, or will that be screened with these additional height branches?
My understanding is that will give it a tree-like top. I mean, the applicant could speak to that more, but that's those pictures, I'm going to go back. It sort of has a top now. It doesn't have that just cut off. So it does have a bit of a top. I don't believe that'll be really visible from the ground, you know, but from the views that the applicant provided, you can see it has a bit of a top.
Not
it's-
branches top?
It has a
but,
top, yes.
Like a cap top?
Yes.
Okay. That's my only question right now.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, Ms. Olander, I just wanted to reiterate the fact, or the question here. Significant gap in coverage. That's always been a kind of an important issue to the board when looking at alternative sites and things like that. So in your opinion, the applicant demonstrated that there's a significant gap in coverage, and this will satisfy the coverage gap?
So Julie Olander for the record, so that, that section of code is a little vague, I must say. It does say that if there's white areas, there are some white areas in the area, so that's part of the significant gap. I might refer to Planning Manager Trevor Lloyd to look at that section, and maybe he could read that section out a little bit so that you could see. It's, from my perspective, they did show that they met that significant gap. I went over that section of code quite closely, but if you want the verbatim, I could have him read that off for you. I thought about bringing it, but I said, oh, I knew he would have it at hand, and it's, I believe, section 32455, or maybe it's 60.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, this is, again, as Ms. Olander indicated, Article 324, Section 324.55, significant gap coverage. A significant gap for purposes of this article shall include a wide area where no cellular service from any carrier is available. A wireless cellular facility shall be permitted at any location if the applicant can demonstrate by technical studies that A, the facility is for personal wireless service as defined by applicable federal statutes or regulations, B, a facility at the site proposed is necessary to close an existing significant gap or gaps in the availability of personal wireless service, and C, the facility in the location proposed is therefore eligible for the following increases in allowable height of a monopole. The height of the antenna shall be limited to the building standard height for an allowed main structure plus up to 10 feet above the height in any residential regulatory zone, or and there's a list of height standards based on pole height and distance from residential properties, all of which comply with these standards.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Thank you, Mr. Olander.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Oh, Ms. Hill?
Julie, do you know if, this is owned by the same person, the two properties, the dental office and then the parking lot and the monopole site? Has TRVA considered that one project area for purposes of calculating land coverage?
Julie Olander for the record, I would not be able to answer that question. The applicant might be able to give you that. The application indicated that that was one of the criteria that they had to address with TRPA, but my understanding of that was just on that parcel, but I could be mistaken. So he possibly could answer that
Because
more fully.
usually if you have a primary use, which is the dental office, you can't have parking on a separate parcel because there's no primary use associated with it. So you have to combine the two parcels into one project area by a deed restriction in order to calculate land coverage. So it probably is. I just wondered why you didn't show the both parcels, because it's considered probably one project area, but.
Well, just to clarify with the county, we would not allow that probably, that would probably not, that would not be allowed in the county either, just to have that separate parcel.
Right, for parking.
For parking. So I have a feeling this has been here for a long time, so that it was established probably, I don't know how long ago it was established. Maybe there's probably someone in the audience that could answer that, or possibly you've been up there at the lake for a long time too. So they would probably be able to tell you when that parking lot was established there. But yeah, that's an unusual situation to have parking on one part of the parcel. They have parking on their parcel too, but then they have this additional parking. So it doesn't meet current code.
Right.
So it's, in a sense, grandfathered in. We would see it as a non-conforming use.
But I would think you would show both parcels. I don't know. Instead of just showing the one parcel with the parking lot and the proposed monopine pole.
So the pole is proposed only to be on the one parcel, but I'm not sure.
Right. But
And they are two parcels. They're legally two parcels.
correct.
But I can't speak for TRPA and what, how
But
they
it
would,
doesn't comply
their
with your
coverage.
code either.
I beg, yeah, it does, the parking lot does not meet our code
Right.
currently, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lander, just for my own edification, TRPA asked that the height be extended so they could put a cap on it so it looks more like a natural tree.
Correct.
That's correct. And they also requested additional trees be put on site? of that
No, they
location?
didn't. They asked that nothing be added to the site originally. TRP had asked the applicant not to do anything to the site except put the tower, put the equipment there. However, after further conversation with the applicant, I said possibly adding some trees and some native landscaping. We had a conversation about that. And so they proposed to add that and talk to TRPA. TRPA didn't have an issue with that type of landscaping. They wanted to keep it looking as natural as possible. And so they just want that kind of same look maintained on the parcel in that area.
So they brought it to the attention of TRPA to actually add some additional trees, and TRPA didn't have a problem with it?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
No.
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the applicant is here.
Right. And would the applicant wish to come forward and speak on this issue?
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Flynn. I'm here with John Peterson. We're with Incline Partners LLC. I'd like to thank the board for hearing our project this afternoon, and certainly thank Julie for putting the staff report together so that could be heard. Thought I'd do just a brief background on Incline Partners. We've a small tower company, been in business for 20 years. I'm a resident of Incline Village, been there for 20 years. I've been in the industry for 30. Incline Partners has tower sites in Nevada, California, Oregon, and Washington. And we have a couple locally in Douglas County on Highway 395 and Highway 50. We have all of the major cellular carriers as tenants on our towers. And since Julie did such a good job, I thought I'd focus a little bit more on the issues surrounding Incline Village. First thing is the need for this. Julie showed the coverage, and a lot of the coverage that's in Incline Village is considered underserved, and Crystal Bay as well. The area of downtown, south of downtown to the lake, kind of the core area of Incline, the Lakeview subdivision, is all underserved. The post office, the Incline Village shopping market area is underserved. The Ponderosa subdivision that is to the west of town is literally, does not have cellular service, certainly in-building cellular service. And small portions of the Mill Creek subdivision, which is on the east side of town, is also underserved. There's a dead zone on Highway 28 on Crystal Bay that extends pretty much from about 1/8 of a mile past the junction of Highway 28 and 431, almost all the way up to the state line. You just drop your calls and just reinitiate when you get at either end of that. Our site will cover all of these problem areas. And also the idea of in-building coverage, it's way below industry standards. Most people aren't using landline phones anymore. So Residents, businesses, emergency services, they all need to have in-building coverage, and we currently don't have that in Incline Village. The other issue that's involved is network capacity. Individual tower sites don't have unlimited capacity, and by adding an additional site, we can add increased capacity for additional users. Speed for data will be increased dramatically for internet service as well as emails. Incline Village is basically overloaded with the system that's currently there, and it really sees that when it's in peak tourist season. As a public safety needs, 70 to 80% of all 911 calls are placed from wireless devices. That percentage is sure to grow as more and more people get rid of their landlines. In addition, one of the carriers that we're currently negotiating with, AT&T, has a new federally funded project for a nationwide dedicated first responder services called FirstNet. AT&T, like I said, will be on this site, and it gives first responders priority access to all wireless frequencies during an emergency service. And we've seen where that could be just incredibly important during the fire season, especially like what we've seen in California. Alert Wildfire Project is a camera-mounted system that goes on towers for early fire detection. Graham Kent of UNR is the project director, and he's told us that he is evaluating this new site as a possible candidate for that. The network providers that are looking to co-locate on this, we are currently, like I've mentioned, negotiating with AT&T and Verizon. Sprint has approved the location and is waiting for funding in order for a future build plan, and T-Mobile is currently evaluating the site. Those are the four main carriers. The process that we've gone through with both Washoe County and TRPA codes, and you'll all know this, but both codes require us to meet the more restrictive elements of both codes, further limiting our location and height options in Incline Village. Some examples of items that are in one code but not the other would be like setback from scenic corridors of Highway 28 and 431, visibility from the lake. The TRPA code for cellular facilities has this as a permissible use with a use permit in the Incline Village Commercial Community Plan area, which we are in. Our TRPA application was deemed complete November 1st last year, which means we've met all of the criteria and conditions that they've imposed on us. There will be a hearing scheduled after the Washoe County Board of Adjustments. TRPA and Washoe County requested site mitigations, and I'll go through them. Increase the branch count to 3 branches per foot. This gives you a fuller, more realistic looking tree. They've asked for, and we've agreed, and had the supplier, towers vendor, be able to combine both green and browning needles on the branches so that you don't get that sometimes look of a very green tree during a part of the season when the needles are browning. TRPA has asked for that, and we'll let them have the, unless they want to defer to us, to go ahead and pick the combination that best suits their need for those different colored needles. The simulated bark, the visible portion of the tower, it's below 30 feet, that's not hidden by the tree branches. We're going to go ahead and make that a simulated bark versus just a flat brown tower at their request. The top hat that you're talking about is not really so much a cap or a hat, it's additional branches that are fitted into the tower that give more of a pinnacle shape to the top of it. TRPA requested that, as well as we're got with the tower manufacturer, we're going to have additional branches at the very top portion of the tower that will help cover the antennas on that top location. That's the additional 5 feet, by the way, that's gone from 112 to 117. There's a sound mitigating enclosure on the standby generator, which Julie talked about the wood slatted fencing. We're also going to paint the fencing so that it does not have a reflective quality, and that painting will match the slatting that goes into it. We've completed a radio frequency study that she mentioned by Hammond and Edison. They're the preeminent scientific engineering firm on the West Coast that handles EMF studies. We've completed a noise study that assures that the compliance with Washoe County and TRPA noise ordinances, and that was mainly for the standby generator. We've had an arborist go ahead and recommend those additional cedars that we were going to put in, and we're totally fine with that. I think it'll add a nice dimension to the property. We did several community outreach meetings and provide notices, and I thought I'd just kind of go through a little bit of it. I attended the Village Community Forum, formerly the Bonanza meeting, at the request of TRPA. We had about 25, 30 residences there. There was a Q&A section that lasted probably an hour and a quarter, and I'd say there was more people that were against it, but there were certainly plenty of candidates or residents there that would like to see this also. The In-Kind Village Citizens Advisory Board was done in March. My partner John Peterson did that. The notices that went out to the community included the CAB and the Board of Adjustments. TRPA for this use has expanded the normal notice situation to include 2 notices. One is the initial notice that goes out that just basically solicits comments. They expanded the notice area from its normal amount to 1/4 of a mile. So what we've seen in that first notice is TRPA mailers included over 650 residences. And the second mailer would go out to that same amount of people prior to the hearings officer meeting that would be scheduled after this one with TRPA. The major objections that came from the community outreach meetings and mailers seem to be, number one, health and safety issues. The radio frequency concerns seem to dominate the meetings. As many of you are aware, the FCC, and Julie commented on this, are the ones that set the standards, and we fully comply with all of them. The Hammett and Edison study that I mentioned has that compliance for radio emissions at a mere 6% of the FCC allowable standards. That is under a worst-case scenario with them running both AT&T and Verizon on the site. The visual concerns was the next one. The visual mitigations that I described in that long list are pretty much going to be integrated, or not pretty much, they are going to be integrated into the final design. And so that's why we were able to get our application deemed complete by TRPA. The location issues, our proposed location optimizes the coverage that we can get from this site. Incline Village kind of has a nose or a spine from the downtown area down towards the lake. On both east and west sides of that, it tends to lose elevation. And as you lose elevation, that coverage from that area where we are at covers those areas nicely. It makes it into the Crystal Bay dead zone. It also goes back to the east over into the Mill Creek area where we have some coverage issues. And it basically allows us to get one site instead of having multiple sites, ones that would be on the east and ones that would be on the west. So it's really a single site solution, whereas other solutions would probably only require that multiple sites be put in. The Washoe County and TRPA codes favor the use in commercial districts. We are in, as Julie said, a general commercial district, and we're also in the TRPA Incline Village Commercial Community Plan. And that plan, well, basically they encourage you at TRPA to get into that area because of the commercial application of it. The fourth thing that came up in all the meetings was the noise and safety concerns. Our radio equipment at the site does not produce any noise. Standby generator is going to have a level 2 acoustic enclosure to limit the sound, as that was noted by our sound study. It's an unmanned facility, so traffic, generates little, almost no traffic. Once construction is completed, monthly visits by each carrier's technician is all you see. One of the items that came up a couple times was it's too close to schools, and this is simply not the case. Our site is 0.27 miles, so over a quarter mile away from Incline Middle School, and 0.34 miles from Incline Elementary School. Other issues that came up were higher and better use for the property is commercial development. And the reality is TRPA commercial floor area limitations in Washoe County effectively prohibit any new commercial developments in Incline Village. So it's not even realistic. There is significant community support for our site. Like I mentioned, multiple residents at both the above meetings spoke in favor of the project. And in addition, staff has received approximately 50 letters of support from local residents. So in conclusion, we believe we have established the need for the project. We've complied with both codes. We've exceeded all the safety standards. We've mitigated all the visual concerns, and we ask for approval. I would say that I can't answer your question, Ms. Hill, with regards to the deed restriction. These properties have been combined for TRPA's purposes for coverage, and there is a deed restriction on the parcel.
Thank you. Ms. Hill?
Did you have to transfer coverage for this project?
Well, we haven't transferred it yet.
But you will need to.
Yes.
Is the TRPA, you have a complete application since November, and they haven't issued the permit yet. Is
They
that
have-
my understanding?
That's correct.
They're waiting for Washoe County?
Yes.
That's my only questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Flynn?
Well,
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Ms. Hill?
will the coverage that you transfer to the site be commercial?
Coverage doesn't come in
I
classifications.
mean, it doesn't have to be commercial floor area.
No.
Because it's a commercial project.
So the class for the property is figured out by drainage, basically. So we're going to bring in.
So it's a land capability 4 or something?
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
bring in the appropriate classification of land capability. But to answer your question on the commercial floor area, the use is not considered a commercial use. It's a public utility. Therefore, it does not require CFA.
Oh, okay, great. Would you mind commenting on the recent situation in Ripon, California, where they had the monopole near the elementary school and several of the students, I think it was 4 students, came down with cancer? And I don't know if it's attributable to the tower or some other factor, but they did remove that tower?
Only what I've read. I know it was in the newspaper. The carrier was Sprint, and I think just to avoid public issue,
They just what?
just to avoid the public outcry on it, they removed it. And they'll
they
just
tore
put
it
it
down.
somewhere else. The idea that it has been proven to have any linkage to that site, I think is a stretch. Nobody's provided any proof at all to that regards, then
And it's just a coincidence.
potentially. You'd have to, I don't know how to answer that other than the FCC is in control of all of this, and they're the ones that make the decisions on that. And I know it wasn't something the FCC came and said that they had to remove it. It was done voluntarily by the carrier,
After pressure from the parents? or
presumably.
the community?
I've had no involvement with it.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to know if you're aware of it.
Yes.
Mr. Flynn, just a quick question. Madam Secretary, can you please put up the LTE coverage document up there? There we go. So we have the before and after picture of what it is currently and what it will be if this tower is approved at this location, which would indicate that it probably would cover a significant area, especially to the right, I'm sorry, well, to my left anyway, to your left too, the development down there, that it currently is not covered, as I can see at least on my, my copy that I have in front of me. I guess my other question is this is strictly identified by land usage, but this will also extend coverage out into the bay further too, will it not?
I didn't quite understand your question on the land one, so
I guess a point of clarification is on the, and it's not even a question, but on your existing coverage, if you look mid-page, moving to the left of it, there's a whole development here. It looks like streets and everything that is uncovered.
So the Ponderosa section, which is kind of above Crystal Bay?
Yes.
Okay. So that is basically going to be getting coverage from our site that goes up to, what happens with this is when the carriers put their antennas on, they pretty much aim them out to the horizon. And so what you do is you see, it doesn't take into account that section, which is kind of up in the high Tyner, they call it Tyner subdivision up there, is kind of above the horizon line for this site as far as that goes. But if you're above it and you're using a cell phone, you're basically having a direct look down to the tower site, and you'll have excellent coverage in there. It won't be a problem. As far as it shooting out into the bay and into the lake, pretty much once a radio signal hits the water, it goes until it stops. So what they try and do is point their antennas not necessarily directly out into the bay, because that you don't really have a problem if you're out in a boat. You could probably get coverage from multiple sites all over the lake.
So the addition of the tower will not help cell phone coverage if you're actually out on the lake proper. If you had an emergency out on the lake, the odds are still pretty good that you would be able to access emergency services.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the close proximity of this, that whole area around the lake is going to be booming with coverage.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other-
There's nothing to stop it, is what it comes down to.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Flynn? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. I believe we had another representative from the applicant, I should say. Is that true or? No, I'm okay. Okay, that's good. That's fine. Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter?
Yes, we do. First up is James Barris, followed by Wayne Ford.
Please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is James Barris, Incline Village.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and board members, my wife and I hereby request that you deny the application for the proposed Incline Village monopole. We are full-time residents of Incline Village, whose house is approximately 500 feet from the proposed site. We have already provided detailed explanations of our objections, which are in the record. We would like to highlight three main concerns. First, a cell tower is an inappropriate use of the parcel in the heart of Incline Village and will have a negative impact on the surrounding businesses and residents such as ours. The images that were shown show a 117-foot tower, but are misleading as they do not show to scale the tower height, nor do they show the fact that I believe 6 or more heritage trees that are currently in that zone are going to be removed. So in other words, the combination of those two features will make the tower stand out as an eyesore. Secondly, at ground level, the mechanical yard will be mostly concrete with large pieces of equipment surrounded by a slotted fence that will not adequately hide the equipment. A 210-gallon diesel fuel tank for backup generator poses a potential environmental and fire hazard. I used to be in that business. Trust me, we used to sell leak detection equipment. Fire danger is always present. The generator noise heard during power outages will be disturbance to the surrounding area and residents such as ours. The parcel is better served as a commercial residential build-out, not a cell tower. Also, Public lands which could potentially be better, or that could better serve the purpose, such as the county maintenance yard, were not even considered during the application process. Number two, the improved cell coverage map provided is inaccurate and misleading. New, smaller towers that can fill gaps, such as those added at 885 Tahoe Boulevard, can easily fill many of the kinds of service gaps that we currently have. Furthermore, for indoor use, both AT&T, Verizon, and all the carriers now provide voice over IP service, such as I have in this building right now, which basically takes a half a bar up the full bar for indoor use. And that's readily available. Everybody here has access to it. Third, the tower will detrimentally change the character of the neighborhood and be potentially injurious to residents such as us. Property owners nearby will be negatively affected by the perceived. Whether there's a true health risk or not, generally people perceive there is a risk. And that necessarily will cause our property values to go down.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Next is Wayne Ford, followed by Michael Abel.
My name's Wayne Ford. I'm speaking as a resident of Incline for many years. I live at 731 Linda Court. In one of the white zones, I've had coverage for years, 15 years with AT&T there. My daughter has mobile, T-Mobile. She has coverage. I believe your code says no coverage. We have coverage. I work in architecture up there. I basically travel many of those subdivisions. I always have coverage in most of the Ponderosa areas. The area I'm most concerned about, beyond the maps not being right, is that the scenic is representing the real scenic area. That's right in front of the parcel. A picture of that lot was never shown, and I provided you an image showing what the fence would look like as a handout. Now, that fence is going to be 32 feet, approximately 32 feet away from the bike path, where thousands of people walk during the summer. I'm not underestimating that. That's a main corridor. We've got a mechanical yard there and everything else, but I want to come back to one thing the gentleman just mentioned about the trees. TRP didn't realize that the map site plan that they were given was 15 years old. I was a designer with Zephyr Architects at the time we did the addition on Incline Dental. That's the site plan we used at that time. The tree there, the one they're taking out, is considered old growth tree. That has to have findings made with it. It was shown at 22 inches. It's 24.5 inches in diameter. The one 5 feet from that corner where the foundation of some kind has to be put in for the yard, that is an old growth 30-inch tree. Under Paul Nielsen's 2001 directive, that tree cannot be closer than 6 feet to a foundation or it's considered gone. So TRPA needs to revisit the quality of the site plan given to them. But more importantly, the gentleman before me, not to repeat it too many times, it's not with the character of the area. There's other ways to solve the cell service problem. I'm not an expert in that, but putting this in the middle of town is not what we need. Now, there's people on the board that know about TRPA and our new community plan. There will be more commercial floor area. That will be coming if we meet some of the requirements of the new community plan. And that's part of growth. This is a key lot. It is one parcel area because I worked on the project. And leaving the dental office off that is a misrepresentation of the true impacts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Next is Michael Abel, followed by Pete Todorov.
My wife and I are owners of residents of a property on Southwood Boulevard in Incline Village, approximately 300 to 400 feet from the proposed cellular tower. I've already submitted a letter opposing the tower. We live in an environmentally sensitive area, and it seems to me that our commissioners have a responsibility first to protect the environment and the residents of the area, and last, to let Verizon customers get better cell phone coverage. As my neighbor Robert Holman over here stated, in addition, in his letter to the commission, in addition to the Washoe County's code prohibitions for the tower, paraphrasing, Turpin's stated responsibility is to, quote, to preserve and enhance the unique natural and human environment while improving local communities and people's interactions with our irreplaceable environment and ensuring community health and safety for future generations. This project will indisputably have many negative environmental, economic, health, noise pollution, and safety consequences. How about property values? Despite Incline Village's healthy real estate environment, this project will negatively impact nearby property owners. We will, in essence, be subsidizing the owners of the new tower with depreciation of our own property values. Health risks. Living in proximity to a cell tower may substantially increase risks to my health and others who live in proximity to the proposed tower. A cell tower located on school property in Ripon, California, that Ms. Hill alluded to, was recently removed after 4 students and 3 teachers contracted cancer. Within 200 or 300 feet of this proposed tower lies a sizable housing complex inhabited mostly by non-English speaking residents. Because of that language barrier and reluctance to speak in public, I doubt that they'll be speaking. So I'll speak as their advocate. Many children live in this complex. Is the potential, maybe not actual, but potential risk to their health and lives worth less than Mr. Flynn's and Verizon's profit? The internet is replete with references to cancer caused by cellular radiation. European standards are 1/10, let me repeat that, 1/10 US standard. They are erring on the side of caution rather than risking their population's exposure to unknown risks. German and Israeli studies have shown significant increases in cancer risk after 5 years of exposure to nearby cellular antennas, and I have a reference to that. Why this location? After our community rejected a similar tower near the Incline Village High School, why here? Why can't such a tower be located in another place remote from our population centers, or better yet, ignore this imagined problem? Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Next is Pete Todorov, followed by Carol Black.
My name is Pete Todorov. I'm chairman of the Citizens Advisory Board and moderator of the Incline Crystal Bay Community Forum. First of all, I wanted to mention that there were 2 notices given to my cab people, one to myself and one to Jerry Ike on this issue. It was a mistake, I guess. There were only 2 people that received it on my board, and so that's why there wasn't any opposition to it, so to speak. But anyhow, we as members of Incline Village Community Forum submit this letter asking you to deny this application by Incline Partners to build a cell tower on the proposed site in Incline Village. We base our request on 6 reasons for denial and are detailed in this letter I've distributed to you, which is now summarized. Our first reason, Incline Partners has not provided significant coverage gap in Incline Village that can only be filled by a proposed cell tower. Regarding coverage, we request you deny this because the gap in coverage represent Incline Partners coverage map inaccurate, indicating that there's no cell coverage where residents have been proven, and they have signed areas. They've signed areas where they have coverage, just like Mr. Ford said. Most proposed coverage in Incline Village will duplicate current Verizon cell tower coverage. The proposed tower will be at the middle of Incline Village, but new coverage will primarily be at least west of 431 in Crystal Bay. New smaller towers can fill that void in Incline Village. Newly approved towers in Kings Beach may duplicate Incline Partners' proposed coverage. Our second reason for denial is Incline Partners will not enhance emergency service communications. FirstNet.gov provides adequate coverage for the first responders in Incline Village. We request you deny this application because the proposed cell tower is not needed to provide enhanced cell coverage in Incline Village first responders. A third reason is for denial. Incline Village partners will be inappropriate and out of scale to use a parcel that will have a negative impact, especially surrounding residents. We request you deny this because the cell tower equipment will have a negative visual impact, and nature of the scale of the tower equipment yard is not appropriate for the parcel. Our fourth reason is the project will change the character of the neighborhood and potentially injurious to residents. We request you deny the application of TRP Class 1 bike park beside the parcel. Residents and nearby high-density residents will be affected by perceptive health risk and high-frequency radiation. The tower collapse or fire would be disastrous in the middle of Incline Village. The perceived hazards are negatively affect the prices of the surrounding area. And then you have the rest of it. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Next is Carol Black, followed by William Black.
I'm Carol Black, and I'm a resident of Incline Village, live close to the site where the proposed tower would be. I left you some slides, I think you passed them out, and that's what I wanted to speak to. I'm going to be talking primarily about public safety issues related to these towers. And the first slide is a table which talks about several risk factors: falls, people falling as they're servicing the towers and getting injured, some die, falling debris, collapse, fire, ice, wind, and earthquakes. Several of these are known risks of towers. You can Google the internet as well as I did and find it all over the place. The first four: falls, falling debris, collapse, fire, and ice. Ice sheets fall off of these towers, land on people and things. Towers catch on fire, etc. There are also some environmental factors associated with tower collapse, and those include fire, ice, wind, and earthquakes, all of which we're at some risk for in the environment in Incline Village, putting us at increased risk of adverse events related to these kind of environmental situations. So what worries me? One of my neighbors, who I hope won't mind me quoting him, commented, "It's a size 12 project for a size 6 spot." Basically, the size of the property, actually, I noticed it's only about 10% bigger than the pickleball courts that are going to be put in at that other place you were talking about. It's really a small site. What if the tower catches on fire? They do happen. Then it sparks a wildfire during wildfire season. We're at high risk of wildfires up there. We see signs all the time. There's a fall zone concept that many municipalities use in thinking about safety of towers. What if the tower collapsed? Where might it land? Shouldn't collapse, right? But they do at some frequency. Well, the smallest tower zone they use is the height of the tower. Let's use that. That's actually, many people view that as not adequate, but let's use that for fun. So if the tower collapsed, where would it land? It could hit the adjacent dental office, the one we've been talking about. Bam, splash, boom, crash. It could fall across Village Boulevard. Bam, splash, boom, crash. And it could also hit adjacent buildings on other adjacent buildings. There's a office building behind, I think it would hit. And it also could hit people on an incline way. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. People have already talked about the industrial stuff. I was interested in the comments about noise because my read of the proposal, the noise from the emergency generator was excluded from the noise analysis. I may have misread it. What if somebody gets over the fence around the base thing and climbs the tower? Happens. There's internet examples of people having to be rescued when they kind of went up the tower to see the world, I guess. So I also included in these slides, 3 slides, which we're not going to have time to go through, which talk about incidents, recent incidents Because the other thing is, well, we've already fixed those issues. You may see old comments, but recent issues of fire, ice and wind collapsing a tower, wind collapsing a tower. There were two. One was wind, which collapsed a tower that was rated for 90 miles an hour, and it went down in a 55-mile-an-hour gust. We see that. Another was admittedly in a tornado, but above the tree canopy, there are wind speeds recorded that are comparable to that. So those would be big oopses. Not common, but they would be big oopses. It's an industry driven by profit. These are catastrophic but low-frequency events. You've heard there are other alternatives. I ask you to please decline this permit in lieu of other options with less public exposure and risk.
Okay, Ms. Black,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next is William Black, followed by Carl Tomes.
I'm William Black. I live far enough away from the tower so as probably not being able to see it, but near enough to it to be radiated. I wanted to talk a little bit about the health effects because all the applicants have poo-pooed health effects on the basis of FCC regulations. The FCC is not on our side. Their regulations are based only on the heating effects of cellular radiation and only the heating effects for a 30-minute exposure. We have to realize that the residents in the area, of course, will be exposed 24/7. In addition, we know that there's ample data that shows that there's biological effects at the cellular level, like disruption of DNA, and there's hormonal effects, like effects on reproduction and on an assortment of hormones. And these are undeniable effects. There's lots and lots of scientifically validated data that's available in legitimate publications that have been peer-reviewed by physicians, by biologists, by chemists, et cetera. So there is no doubt that cellular radiation can cause harm at the cellular level, and even in small animals. We have no proof, though, that it can kill people after, say, 10 years of exposure. And until there's such proof, governments don't tend to react. I can refer you to asbestosis, which took many years to become obvious that it was a killer. And even then, the governments didn't react by changing standards. It was basically the courts. Cigarettes, that took many years to show that they caused cancer. The governments didn't intervene early in the sales of cigarettes. Radium used to be used in patent medicines. After a while, it became obvious it killed people. And so then the Food and Drug decided to intervene. So what I would say in summary is that there is no doubt that the cellular radiation can cause damage. Whether it can kill people, whether it definitely causes cancer, as in the school that people mentioned, well, that's epidemiologic data, and the FCC doesn't consider that adequate to settle the issue. Now, our kids' will know the answer to that question, and I can even guess what it might be. In conclusion, I would say that I think the law probably doesn't allow you to disapprove the application based on health issues, but I'm hoping you can find some other reason to disapprove of it, because I believe the health issues are real.
Thank you, Mr. Black.
Next is Carl Tomes, followed by John Eppolito.
Hi, my name is Carl Tomes. I've been an Incline Village resident for the last 23 years, most of which was spent in the Mill Creek area, about 2 blocks away from the Hyatt, which is one of the existing cell towers in town. And I can tell you the service in that area is very poor. And I'm an independent real estate broker. I communicate with a lot of clients via cell. I kind of rely on myself for business. And whether you're in your house, in your car, or trying to talk to other people in buildings in the town, it is highly inadequate, the current cell service. So I would urge the board to approve the cell tower so that we could get to a standard level of cellular service for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is John Apolito, followed by Alec Flores.
My name is John Apolito. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've lived in Incline for about 20 years, over 20 years, and I've been selling real estate there for almost as long. The coverage, for 20 years, I've never had all that area where we don't have coverage. I've been making calls in that area for 20 years with AT&T. That map is not accurate. In fact, yesterday, I was on a call from the traffic circle all the way to my office in Kings Beach, and that happens a lot. I don't know who fabricated that map, but it's not accurate. This tower is totally out of scale with what's around it. The way I heard is it's 50% higher than it should be. It went from 80 feet to almost 120 feet. Also, the community master plan is supposed to be revised this summer. I think we should at least wait until the community master plan comes out, the new one. A while back, the Incline firefighters were asked if they would have a tower on the fire station, and they turned it down. And the reason is because the International Association of Firefighters have come out against having these towers at fire stations. I know some fire stations do it, but Incline Fire Station did not want it. So then AT&T tried to put it at the high school. We were able to stop that. This one, I guess, is going to be harder to stop, but when I look at the map, Incline Middle School is probably within 750 to 1,000 feet straight line. None of the parents at Incline Middle School have been notified. The commercial area and all the rentals around there, even though it's commercial, there's a lot of low-priced rentals in that area. There's infants and children that are going to be within a few hundred feet of that tower 24/7 until they're at least 7, 8, 9 years old. And then once they get to the middle school, they're still going to be within that tower 24/7, maybe within 750 feet of it. The gentleman who just spoke a minute ago, Mr. Black, he's a medical doctor and he has a PhD. He knows what he's talking about. I don't know if these things cause cancer, but why risk it with the kids? Keep it away from the schools. What else did I have? Oh, being a real estate broker, I know one person who's already said they're probably going to sell if this tower comes. I do think it will decrease the property values in that area. I'm sure that the Incline partners will make that up for the people. Please do not allow this to happen or reject the proposal or whatever you say. Thank you.
Next is Alec Flores, followed by Lynette Cardendale.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. Alec Flores, resident of Incline Village, pretty much my whole life, 25 years. I have one unique point I'd like to bring up to the board and to Incline Partners LLC and to everyone in this room, that an addition of a cell phone tower will not guarantee more cellular service. And I reference what happened last year during the California wildfires in August, where Verizon, one of the providers for the cell phone tower, will be working with them, throttled Santa Clara County Fire Department's unlimited data plan during the wildfires. Under the new net neutrality guidelines, we're not guaranteed the data. It's happened before, and it could happen again. Verizon apologized about it, but unless net neutrality guidelines change, this will still be a relevant issue, even if the cell phone tower is approved, which is a primary reason why I'm opposed to it, besides the environmental, health, and cosmetic issues of the town. One last point I'd like to bring up is Architectural Digest named Incline Village, Nevada, one of the prettiest town in Nevada the past 2 years. And I'm curious if This cell phone tower is going to change that for the next year on their next ruling. But thank you, have a great day. I'm opposed to the proposed location of the cell phone tower.
Next is Lynette Cardendale, followed by Harlan Rodriguez.
Hello, Lynette Cardinale. I've been at Incline since 1992. I am a Mill Creek resident, and I do not agree with the fellow that came previous. I get wonderful service all the time. And so I have no issue with my service, and I can call from anywhere in my property, anywhere in my home, and in the surrounding areas. I am deeply concerned that it's a continuous encroaching upon a community that is so relevant as a national treasure. This has escaped being put on school property and now being right in the middle of our community. You might as well just put it as Mrs. Black just said a while ago, on a barge in the middle of the lake so everyone can see it. If this place, Incline Village, is not regarded, which is part of Nevada, Washoe County, as a national treasure, then it really is unconscionable to recognize that. I remember when TRPA made such an issue about the kayaks that are by the Hyatt. They had to be covered with brush, they cannot be seen, but you're gonna put something so obtruse in the middle of our community is something that I could never imagine as a homeowner, as a visitor, and as a resident of a beautiful thing of Lake Tahoe. This cannot be permitted in my lifetime or anyone else's. You won't put it in a school, and the general citizenry of Nevada and of Incline Village don't want that in their community. We regard our health. People live there and move there for health factors. It's the most healthiest place. It has been said that moving to Incline in an area like that increases one's life by 11 years. I don't want mine decreased. People value their homes. People move there for the specific detailing of the environment of Incline. To be encroached continuously for other people's profit or necessity of cell phone tower usage that can be put someplace else is absolutely discriminatory and does not declare the essence of Incline Village. This cannot be permitted. It needs to stop continuing to come into the village that is so small and absolutely depicting the beauty of Incline and Lake Tahoe. Number two, I have heard that if that tower should be decreased, it's going to be at the county's expenses.
Ma'am?
That cannot be allowed. Thank you.
Quite welcome. Thank you.
Next is Harlan Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. My name is Harlan Rodriguez. I've been living in Incline Village my whole life, 27 years. I actually reside at 212 East Enterprise, which happens to be 330 feet away from the proposed tower, something the partners did not mention. Within this vicinity, we have 29 apartments. Within these 29 apartments, between all these 29 apartments, we have about 70 people living in these apartments. Amongst them, young children. One of them happens to be my 2-year-old goddaughter, who is also my niece. Now, I'm no expert about the health risk of, these towers, the health risk that they cause, but I do kind of believe in Murphy's Law, and if you're not familiar in Murphy's Law, if anything can happen, it will happen. So I don't want to risk myself, my father, who also lives there, and we both work there because we own that property, and are tenants to these health risks. And besides that point, I believe it'll have a negative effect cosmetic-wise to the town, our beautiful town, the most beautiful town in the West Coast. I urge you that, I hope that you deny this tower, board members. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We have no further public comment.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll close the public comment.
Mr.
Bring it-
Chairman, I believe we have one more gentleman.
Did you put a letter in, or a,
I sent you a document, Robert Holman. I sent you a letter of opposition.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll go ahead and give you the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
If you'll do me a favor and just fill out one of the cards when you're done and give it to Madam Secretary. Cards are in the
Absolutely, be
back.
happy to, sure. My name is Robert Holman, my wife, Robin Holman, and I. We are 75 feet across Village. We've just invested approximately $4 million in redoing the building to the TRPA standards and trying to upgrade Incline Village as a community. When I speak before, and I've been in your position, and in numerous planning hearings and things, what I always think about are two prepositions. One is for and one is to. The for is, who do you as commissioners work for? And the other, the to, is to whom are you accountable? And in this situation, I think you should be accountable to the residents of Incline. They're the most important constituents you have. Washoe County does a lot of good things in Incline, but this, I would argue, is a bad thing. This map is a flawed map. The site plan you looked at before is flawed. If you take all these basic assumptions that they're asking you to make a decision on, they're incorrect. So you're going to make a decision based on information that's not accurate. If you don't do anything here today other than say, we want updated maps, we want a survey of real cell coverage, we want to know why you didn't put the cell tower at the police substation near the roundabout, which addresses the coverage of the biggest white space on this flawed map. If you do nothing else, you should table this motion, you should table this approval until you get real information. Because if you don't have real information, you will be, your decision will be a flawed decision. And it will be the wrong decision if you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak?
We have one more, Jack Dalton.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Dalton. I live at 980 Cart Court, and there's been a lot of people, I oppose the proposition for Incline Partners. I think the last thing that was listed here, which I think is a real deficit in this, is to inform people. And there's a significant percentage of people in the immediate area in terms of the apartments and stuff that were recorded, that Incline Partners apparently has not informed. So I ask you to table this proposal permanently, but if not, at least delay it until at least everybody is informed in the immediate area, including the school. Did the school students, parents get informed? Not by what was said here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no further public comment.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion. Actually-
Mr. Chair, if I could, before you
Yes, please.
start deliberating, just a couple of reminders. Number one, And there's been a lot of discussion about the potential health impacts due to the radio frequency of the communication tower, but keep in mind the local jurisdictions, which this board is part of, is preempted by both federal and state law from exploring that as a possible issue in your deliberations. So I wanted to just emphasize that. Number two, there's been a lot of discussion about the significant gap. Now, keep in mind that for analysis purposes, that's fine. However, that is not justification one way or the other for determination of approval or denial according to code. That only comes to play when the zoning is a residential nature. It is not part of your determination for a general commercial zoned piece of property per code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Flynn, could you come back up to the podium, please? I just have a question for you.
Mike Flynn for the record.
The map that is up there, where did that originate from? Who put that together? How did we come up with?
Our consulting radio frequency firm, Paracle, did that. And they did it based on doing it for coverage plots for all the major carriers throughout the United States. And they do it using topographical mapping that's available through the government.
What is part of the criteria that they're using, though? Are they taking into account the 4 major carriers already and what they're capable of covering? Or is this based on geography, or how do they get to where they're at here?
So they used a current 4G LTE radio and antenna configuration, power levels that are suitable for the 4 carriers. And then you have to keep in mind, too, that we talked about radio waves. They attenuate when they hit something, so they decrease in power. And what you're finding is this whole incline village is highly sloped and heavily forested. So it makes it really difficult for single towers to have coverage that would do the whole community. And I would just state that if the coverage and need wasn't there, why are all 4 of the carriers that supply services to Incline Village wanting to go on it? This is a huge cost to them. They're not just doing it for no reason. And one of the biggest reasons that coverage, everybody thinks of it in I go to this place and I can talk on my phone. Well, first of all, you're in a car, which is a lot easier coverage to connect to than inside of a building, number one. Number two is the data transmission on these networks really need that coverage in order for them to work. You'll notice if you get out into a very weak coverage area, you can't log on to the internet. You can't get your email. We've all run into that. You could potentially make a phone call, but that doesn't mean that it's a high quality of service that's going to replace a landline phone when you need it. The coverage that is up there is true. Each carrier up there has different sites. All of them are at the Mountain Golf Course. AT&T's on it, T-Mobile's on it, Verizon's on it. AT&T and Sprint are on the Hyatt. AT&T has the site up at Diamond Peak. That site only looks up and down, for the most part, Highway 28 on the east shore. A tall site like that can't just look down on top of Incline Village and cover the whole thing, because it only has so much capacity. When that capacity is run out, the site's no good any longer. So that's why they're using that one up at Diamond Peak to just look up and down the Highway 28 east shore. There was just a lot of things that were said that were not correct, and I'd be more than happy to talk about them if you'd allow.
I thank you, but if we have questions, we will.
Okay.
Bring you back to the podium.
I have a question for Mr. Flynn. Can we see the 2 pine trees, the drawing of them, where we were talking about the tops before? No, it was the drawing. It showed, yeah. Right here. So those bottom branches, at what height approximately are those, assuming to the top is 117 feet?
They're, 30 feet.
Okay, so Jeffrey and Ponderosa Pines, 40 to 60 feet. So we're at 30 feet for the bottom branches. So I don't see any representation of the appearance of the trees above the tree line in anything that I have in my packet. I would have liked to have seen something other than the street view to more accurately represent the height of the trees as they would appear with the neighboring trees around them. A 24-inch diameter tree probably has a height of around 35 feet, maybe 40. So it appears to me that the bulk of the volume of this tree, the visual volume, if you will, is going to be above the existing canopy. Is that correct?
So our analysis with the TRPA site assessment, as well as the surveyor, had the site's trees more of about 80 feet in height. The actual, one gentleman said that the survey was done 20 years ago. The survey we used for our site plan was done by a local surveyor, and it was done in September of 18. And it was just done in September of 18. And so all the trees that are marked on there are true and correct. And the other thing was said is 6+ trees are going to be removed. If you look at the site plan, only 1 tree is to be removed. And somebody said there's a cell site at 885 Tahoe Boulevard. There's no cell site at 885 Tahoe Boulevard. That's total fabrication. There is no cell site there. Okay.
So I just have one other question, Mr. Flynn. Do you have anything stating that the trees there are 80 feet high around this tree or anything?
Just when we did the site visit with TRPA, that was what we were basing it on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hill, do you have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. We'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Ms. Hill.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody that came on a weekday, in the middle of the day, from Incline. It's a small community, and it's very important to consider that it's a big representation of our community that is against this project. And another thing is this proposed supposed need. I have never had any problem with cell service in Incline anywhere I go, or Crystal Bay. And I can talk on the phone, as one gentleman said, from which I shouldn't be doing, from Incline to Kings Beach. And I don't believe that these coverage maps are accurate, because I don't, just from testimony of the people that live there and my experience and talking to other people, a friend that delivers pizza all over town, doesn't have any problem with cell service. I also don't think it's an appropriate use for the vacant lot in the middle of the commercial core of Incline Village. Like was previously mentioned, the area plan is going to be coming out soon, hopefully, but they've been saying that for 10 years. And commercial floor area will become available, and there is a possibility that that could be like a mixed-use residential commercial development that I think would be more appropriate for a vacant lot in commercial lot in the middle of Incline. And I just feel like this is not appropriate use for this property in our little town.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lawrence.
Well, it seems like we come to this point with almost every cell tower that comes before this board. The most difficult ones we deal with are in residential areas for sure. This area is zoned commercial. It is commercial for a reason. It allows such things as this to exist there. Wow, 117 feet is really up there. There's no doubt about it. As I said to Mr. Flynn, who I think you have a tough job, and I commend you on the green to brown needles and things like that. I think that's great that you guys are doing those types of things to get more of a simulation of what a real tree would look like. I hate monopines in the middle of an industrial park. I've voiced my opposition to those things before. I don't feel that this project was accurately represented here today. That view of those trees at 117 feet with no comparative analysis of trees around them to give me and the other people in this room a greater perspective of whether there is impact or not, I don't believe is represented. It's more of a guess that we have to make. I believe that those trees in there at a 20 to 24 inch diameter caliper, first of all, they're not old growth. I don't believe that to be the case. But regardless, I don't think that there's enough disguising of this tower in this natural setting, in this natural environment, to where I feel comfortable with the citizens there having to, especially those on semi-elevated slopes, to have to view this without at least having an opportunity to make a comparison in your report and your presentation. So I'm still on the fence. I do realize the need for this. I do see this as a commercially zoned area, but I'm still on the fence, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Kind of to echo some of your comments, Mr. Lawrence, I guess first of all, I have no reason to doubt the coverage maps. I don't know why we would make that up. I think that came from probably a reputable business that put that out, and you should have more coverage when you do it. Obviously, if you put more cell towers up, you're going to get more coverage. I think that's kind of an understanding by all. The question is where should they be, and where are they best suited to be? I know Mr. Lloyd addressed the issue, or addressed the fact that health issues are not to be taken into account, and I understand that, and I agree with that. And that is not the purview of this board to address that. But just as a side note, I tried to do some research on those issues, just more or less to educate myself on that. And I researched cell towers through the American Cancer Society, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, EH Trust, National Cancer Institute, the Mayo Clinic, and the World Health Organization, and I could find nothing that actually attributed cell phone towers related to cancer. There's a cluster at Ripon onto school. I understand that. There are cancer clusters elsewhere. I mean, any of us that lived here long enough know that up in Fallon, there was a cancer cluster involving children. They've never been able to identify what that is. Setting that aside, I know we're not taking that into account, but that seems to be one of the common things that we always hear as to the health. And it may turn out that way somewhere in the future, but I don't have the crystal ball. I can't see into the future. I don't know what 20 years from now is going to bring us. All I can tell you is in the environment that we operate today, this is the information we have. I agree with Mr. Lawrence as to the height. I struggle with that in regards that there's going to be a monopole that's going to be 30, 40 feet standing above the rest of the tree line. And although you might be down in the tree line to see it, anywhere else, if you're living up into the hills or something like that, you're going to look out and you're going to see this arrow sitting there. So I struggle with with the height issue as to that. The other things that we consider up here at the board, you know, can constitute site suitability, which is one, and obviously, it's a commercial site. It would be allowable, you know, consistency with the master plan and Tahoe area plan. You've got the TRPA that at least knows what's going on and doesn't seem to have an issue with it. And usually they tend to be, as I understand it, what I know of them, kind of the protectors of the lake. They tend to try and stay on top of all that, and yet now we have them citing in favor of this project. So,
No,
I don't.
that's not true.
Okay, well, let's speak now, but I'm just saying, I mean, if they're telling you that you can't have your kayaks without having them covered, and yet they're gonna allow a monopole.
They
sitting up
didn't
there,
allow
so-
it yet. They haven't issued the permit.
I know, but the point being is that they're working up there, they're an agency that works at the lake, is there for basically the environment and everything up there. So I'm a little bit, I go back and forth on that one. So anyway, I think this is a hard one. I don't know what the answer is. I think cell phone coverage is important, not only for the fact that, you know, you can make a phone call in your car, but as we all get older and things happen, if we fall downstairs, if we slip on ice or something like that, you don't want to be laying out there and not have emergency services because you can't get cell phone coverage. And we do have some actual documents, some letters that came in from people that claim they had to walk 2 to 3 blocks before they could actually get any bars on their cell phone. I don't know what coverage they have. You know, I can't confirm or deny it, but they took their time to go ahead and write us letters also to inform us of that. So with that being said,
Just one more point, Mr. Chair, and I think that has to be recognized here. There is a significant number of people, some 50, I believe, that we've received information in our packets that are in support. And one gentleman here was in support of the tower as well, who gave testimony to the fact that coverage was insignificant for business that he conducted in real estate. And I struggle with that too, because, you know, in these packets, there's 50 people-ish. Mr. Flynn mentioned that, and I think he's right, that have taken the time and written us in support regarding the coverage issue, and they all seem to say the same thing, that it's spotty, broken, at any rate insufficient. So I don't think we can escape the fact that the tower is needed, that it's needed. Our communications are, let's put it this way, that a better communication system, for lack of a better description, is needed.
All the people that were for it signed a form letter.
That they signed, not all of them,
They signed
no.
a form letter.
But
that
not all of them.
All these people and all the rest of the people that are against it, which is huge amounts of people in Incline, wrote their own letter. They took their time out of their day to come here and talk to us. It's not true. This is the Prosperity Center. Therefore, you know, the tourists, more tourists are gonna come and more tourists need cell service. And I'm not supportive of that at all. And I think it's a real gross negligence of us to approve such a thing that is for, it goes against everything that the people in Incline are asking us to not approve this.
So are they lying? Is that what you're saying? Those people
Well,
are all
I'm
lying about
saying,
it?
no, they're not lying about it. I'm thinking they didn't put the effort into it. They didn't come here. They didn't write the letter. They signed a form letter. And I think one of the misconceptions is that there's no coverage in Incline. Well, I don't find that to be true. I do think that's false. I think those maps are not accurate. And we heard from people today that live in these areas, that have lived in these areas for 30 years and have had coverage all that time. We live way up by Diamond Peak. We have plenty of coverage. We only would if we have AT&T. Other carriers like T-Mobile or Verizon and people that come up from the Bay Area that don't have AT&T have problems. But if you have AT&T, you're going to be able to get coverage in Incline, and you have to change your service. You know, big deal, because you can't have Verizon and or T-Mobile or whatever the other ones are. But if you have AT&T, you can get coverage in Incline anywhere. And that's what people that have lived here for 20 years know. So they do have AT&T. And it's not right that this misinformation is being purported as fact. And the health matters. I mean, if you can still sell Roundup in this town or in this country, you know, with glyphosate, and that has been proven to cause cancer, but the government hasn't done anything about it. It's just like FCC saying this is safe too. And I'm not gonna deny it because of health reasons, but as a mother that lost someone to cancer, a daughter, it's scary, and we don't know, like Clay said. And 20 years from now, we could know that it was a wrong decision to prove this.
I guess the one thing I'll add here is, if you got AT&T coverage and it's adequate, well, that's good. But not everybody has AT&T.
Well,
Well,
you
I'm
have
just
to
saying, I mean,
change.
well, they don't, no, they don't have to change, we don't have to force people to change to one carrier. If the monopole
only
is
one-
going to add Verizon and the other companies that will then supply cell service to tourists that come up, to other people that have a different plan. So, because one plan is adequate, there's more than one plan out there, and so, I guess if you have AT&T, you say, yeah, I'm covered, I don't need it. But if you got Verizon or you've got somebody else, you say, it's inadequate.
I don't
They're
know.
looking at a monopole that's going to add the other carriers to it, so you have the four major carriers. So actually, I think it is a true statement to say that if you put a monopole up and you put all the carriers on it, you will have better coverage than what you have now.
I don't know if it's our job to facilitate that, those people that, I don't know, don't have coverage. I think it's not safe for our community, it's not it's not appropriate use, it's not suitable, it changes the character of the neighborhood, it could pose environmental and health and significant risk to the people that live in the neighborhoods, like these people have all said, that live around it. They don't want it. And how can we say yes to putting it there if all these people don't want it? It's just, one person said that it's good, that bothered to come to the meeting. So I'm just, I'm emotionally and I just can't imagine approving it, no.
Well, I do appreciate your input, but I think what we all need to be aware of sitting up here is we can't put emotions, this isn't an emotional issue for us. We're a board that is supposed to be neutral and is supposed to base our decisions predicated upon the facts and the information that is set
Right.
before us. Not personal decisions, not that something happened in the past, or I liked it, or I didn't like it. That's not fair. That would not be fair to an applicant. That would not be fair to the public. For me to interject my personal opinions and vote on a project, whatever the project may be, because I like it, or I don't like it, or I don't like the name of the applicant who, who's submitting it, or whatever. So I really think that what we need to do is look at the facts, look what's been presented before us, look at the pluses and the minuses, look at the people that oppose it, look at the people that are asking for us to support it, and make a determination predicated upon the Washoe County Code that we're bound by to see whether this project meets the standards or not to either be approved or denied.
I'm ready to make a decision, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion?
I guess not.
Mr. Lawrence? Go ahead.
You're going to call for a
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. With no further discussions, I will accept a motion.
I move to approve the project, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead. Is there a second? I will second it.
I move to adopt all of the 8 findings listed in the staff report, and based on those findings, approve special use permit case number WSUP 19-0001 for Incline Partners LLC, subject to the conditions contained in Exhibit A to the staff report. The findings are adopted based on individual considerations of information contained in the staff report, including but not limited to the staff comments regarding the findings, and all exhibits as well as testimony exhibits presented at the public meeting. Council, for the board and the board's secretary are hereby directed to prepare a written action order consistent with this motion, those being for consistency, improvement, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and no effects on military institution. Findings required by section 110.324.75 for telecommunications facilities, those being for communications, that the communications facility meets all the standards of section 110.324.40 through 110.324.60 as determined by the Director of Community Development and or his/her authorized representative. That public input was considered during the public hearing review process, and that the monopole or lattice tower will not unduly impact the adjacent neighbors or the vistas and ridge lines of the county.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries with 2 and 1 opposed. Mr. Lloyd, would you please read the appeal process?
No, they're not
There
going
is
to
no
appeal.
appeal process.
They're passed.
There is no appeal.
Oh, yeah, we can read it again.
You can read
Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is signed by the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and application fee. Thank you.
Who's going to appeal it?
They can appeal it to the Board of County Commissioners.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes that. We'll move on. Chair and board items. Future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items that we have? I do have one for Mr. Lloyd. That was the July meeting date. I know there was some discussion last time. Mr. Toulouse brought up that it was the 4th of July and that we probably weren't going to hold it on that date, and I don't know if anything else has been determined. I know Madam Secretary had sent a thing out about some possible other dates, but we might not have a quorum at that time. So, Mr. Lloyd?
Right. Yeah, just as it so happens, of course, the next Board of Adjustment date falls on the 4th of July. We were looking at the following week.
Okay, 1 second.
Members of the audience, I would, please, if you're going to have public conversations, please move to the back of the room or outside. This meeting is still ongoing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lloyd, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we were looking at the next Thursday, which is July 11th. Wanted to get a poll of the members here. Unfortunately, 2 members aren't here, but I know that the chair mentioned that you would not be available on that date, but I'd like to poll the other 2 if I could at this time. Do you know if you would be available on July 11th?
I received email back from everyone that said they would be available except for Kim Toulouse.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
And then Clay.
I will
of
make
course.
it my best effort to be here, but you're right in the middle of ant season at that point, so.
Yeah, I'm not, that's, the 11th is tentative for me. We're still working through some things, so I wanted to make sure I got it out ahead of time, that I might not be here. But if something changes or if I can adjust the schedule, then I will definitely make it.
Okay. Fortunately, we do still have 3 months. We can follow up in another month or so, and
Let's do that, let's do that.
okay.
Yeah, we'll check on that next time as we get closer. We'll keep
Sounds good.
We'll
Thank
keep
you.
addressing that. Request for information from staff. Any information? Anything? Okay. Directors and legal counsel items, report on previous Board of Adjustment items. Mr. Lloyd?
Nothing to report on previous board items, at least nothing that came from this board. There's a number of code amendments that we're currently in the process at some stage or another. I would, at a future date, like to bring some of those, as they would impact this board, to you. So maybe at the next meeting, I'll have more of an analysis of those code amendments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Large, legal information and updates.
Nothing in particularized. I would just let the board know that we are monitoring all active legislation during this legislative session that's ongoing right now, and we're in the process of monitoring that, making sure that we have county comment on anything that will impact this board and other county agencies.
Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary, is anyone from the public that wishes to speak?
Yes, we have Michael Abel, excuse me.
Mr. Abel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I don't have any prepared comments, but I just want to speak extemporaneously. I think there's as Ms. Hill pointed out, there's a huge difference between somebody responding with a prepared letter and the fact that we got like 25 people that drove down here. It takes an hour to drive down from Incline Village, an hour to drive back, and prepare comments for that, which probably took them another couple hours. So I think there's, with all due respect to Mr. Thomas, I think you're denigrating the fact that so many people took so much time to come down here and negating that to a big extent. The other thing I want to comment on, that I find the procedures of the board is kind of something I'm not accustomed to. I used to live in a community in the Bay Area. I've been in Incline now for 10 years, and I went to a lot of board meetings down there. And what happened is the staff would prepare a report on an issue such as the cell tower antenna or the sign over there at the school. And what they would do is they would prepare a report for the board, and the report would give the pros and the cons, but they wouldn't take a position on things. So for me to come in here and have staff acting as advocates for the developer, to me as a citizen, is absolutely outrageous and highly irregular. And it seems like it's crazy for me to come in here as a citizen and complain about something when I got the staff lined up against me. They have thousands of hours that they can put into advocating for a specific situation. And Joe Sixpack comes in here and I'm going like, what the hell is going on here? Excuse me, I'm sorry for my language, excuse me. But anyway, it just seems like it highly irregular that staff takes a position advocating for the developer. It just seems way out of line. Now, for them to come in here and to give you the pros and the cons, that's fine. That's the way it should be. And that's the way I think would be equitable. And it just seems like the whole way the county is run, and even the way Turpin seems to be run now is kind of out of the box. Anyway, thank you for letting me take the time to say those few words at the end of this discussion.
Mr. Abel, before you leave, usually we just take the comments and stay silent up here, but a couple things. One, I just want you to be aware that it is not my intent to denigrate anybody that comes to the podium and gives their position. We listen with respect, we take into account what is said, and based upon information that we receive, i.e. from staff, and what staff's job is and what they are doing is they are citing, basically they are following the statutes and the codes and the ordinances. And they're predicated, their decisions are predicated upon that they get, the information that they're given to them and whether they meet the code or not. They're not advocating for an appellant, they're not advocating for or against anybody. I think in my time here as not only the chairman but as a board member, I think that the Washoe County planners and the people that we've worked with and the staff have done a phenomenal job and have stated what they find in the cases and what the law states and really have taken no personal opinion or personal direction or interest at all. So I appreciate your input. The director of planning is here. He can take that into account also as to what you said, and we'll see maybe where that might take us in the future. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate you coming all the way down from Incline. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, anyone else wishing to speak?
We have no further public comment.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned.